week after week, as she, has done well and established herself as a really good player on tour. They all come out to support her. And so I think we saw that in Australia when it was kind of overcrowded. They put her on two.
I need you to listen. Stop whatever you are doing. Crank the volume all the way up. Activate Do Not Disturb on your phone. Tell anyone in the room with you to be silent and fix your gaze on this screen this instant. Because what I'm about to share with you is no ordinary sports highlight. This is not another sanitized PR-approved tennis summary that the major networks want you to swallow. This is with absolute certainty one of the most flagrant, infuriating, and systemic controversies in the entire world of professional sports at this moment. We are witnessing a colossal cultural tectonic plate shift in real time, met with the establishment's outright refusal to give it any respect. We have to talk about Jessica Pegula, Novak Djokovic, the Women's Tennis Association, and the completely undeniable global force of nature that is Alex Eala. Allow me to set the scene for you with absolute clarity. The year is 2026. We find ourselves in the opulent, multi-million-dollar metropolis of the United Arab Emirates for the WTA Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships. Jessica Pegula, a true titan of the sport and one of the most respected and established figures in all of women's tennis, has just achieved victory. She fought her way through a perilous talent-stacked draw to claim the Dubai Open, securing one of the most brilliant and hard-earned wins of her celebrated career. This is supposed to be her moment. The flashbulbs are popping. Confetti is cascading down, the microphone is in her hands, and the entire world's attention is focused intently on her. In the world of professional sports, when an athlete stands atop that podium 99.9% of the time, the conversation is about them. They reflect on their grueling training regimen, their fantastic coach, their powerhouse forehand, and their own personal road to the championship. But what Jessica Pegula did was something else entirely. In the very midst of celebrating her own monumental victory, she did something that speaks volumes about her character, her leadership within the locker room, and her straightforward honesty. She redirected her own spotlight. She took that immense global stage and completely pivoted the narrative towards someone she is certain deserves tremendously more recognition, far more respect, and infinitely better handling than what she's been getting from the tennis establishment. She spoke about Alex Eala, and she didn't mince a single word. Pegula made it perfectly and unmistakably clear to the media, the audience, and the executives in the VIP suites that as far as she's concerned, Alex Eala is no longer some promising young talent nervously trying to get her bearings on the professional circuit. That particular story is over. She is a genuine rising star in the most authentic and indisputable sense of the phrase. She is an athlete who has proven over and over again that she belongs at the most elite and fiercely competitive level of this game. She possesses the skills, she has the formidable mental strength, and most critically, she has the aura of a superstar. But this leads to the massive, obvious billion-dollar issue that Pegula courageously brought to light. The WTA, it seems, is not treating her like one, and Pegula, asserting her role as a veteran leader, is no longer willing to remain silent about it. During her press conference, Pegula raised an issue that has been a source of discomfort for many sharp observers for quite a while now. She took the media back in time to her own fierce three-set clash with Alexa at the 2025 Miami Open. She clearly recalled coming out of the tunnel, setting foot on that hard court, and being completely and utterly astonished by what she witnessed and heard. Pegula is an American. She was competing on home soil in Florida. But upon entering that stadium, she felt as if she had crossed into hostile foreign territory. She was totally unprepared for the kind of thunderous, pulsating atmosphere that awaited her. The energy inside that Miami stadium wasn't merely electric, it was atomic. The crowd was gigantic. It was spilling over. It was passionate, thunderous, totally unrestrained, and hanging on every last rotation of the tennis ball. Pegula literally called the scene insane, and she intended that as the highest and most sincere compliment possible. She wasn't complaining about the sound or the animosity. She was in awe of it. Because what she saw with her own eyes that day in Miami was a young Filipino teenage player who had already organically cultivated a fiercely loyal, incredibly vocal following that most decorated multi-time Grand Slam champions could only fantasize about after a decade on the circuit. Pegula looked at the reporters and said, "I'm from there," and the whole crowd was against me. And I was like, what on earth is going on? Like, where did these people come from? But here's the crucial part. This wasn't some isolated one-off Miami occurrence. Pegula was extremely precise about this. She pointed to the evidence over time and remarked that whether in Miami, the oppressive heat of the Australian Open in Melbourne, or on the luxurious courts of Dubai, Alexa has consistently and measurably attracted the largest, most fervent fan support of nearly anyone on the entire WTA tour. People don't simply decide to watch Alexa play, they make a pilgrimage for her. They book hotels far in advance and stand in punishing, sweltering lines that stretch for miles, all for the singular honor of seeing her compete with their own eyes. In the world of modern sports, that kind of pure, unadulterated magnetism is exceptionally rare. That profound gut-level connection between a young star and her international following is precisely what tennis executives have spent years trying to engineer in corporate meetings. The WTA invests millions of dollars in advertising strategies to capture the hard-to-reach Asian market. And yet, right before their eyes is a young woman from the Philippines who has already cornered that market naturally without any corporate help, powered solely by her once-in-a-generation talent, her magnetic charm, and her incredibly compelling underdog journey. But in the face of all this undeniable proof, the ticket revenue, the merchandise sales, the social media engagement, and all the value Alex brings to the sports ecosystem, the WTA has persistently, bizarrely, and maddeningly demoted her to smaller, out-of-the-way courts. And to Jessica Pegula, this isn't merely puzzling. She considers it a deep professional insult. She directly referenced the complete logistical catastrophe that occurred at the 2026 Australian Open, and her description of events is truly hard to process if you have even a basic grasp of how the sports business works. I want you to really absorb this and consider the profound absurdity of what happened. You had a player in Alex Eala who, based on multiple confirmed reports and ticket data, was drawing some of the largest crowds the Melbourne Park tournament had ever experienced in its modern era. We're talking about dedicated fans literally boarding flights from all over Asia, from Manila and Tokyo to Singapore, undertaking that massive financial and logistical effort just because Alex Eala's name was on the tournament schedule. For these fans, it was nothing short of a cultural event. And after those thousands of supporters finally reached the venue prepared for a truly memorable experience, ready to wave the Philippine flag and shout themselves hoarse for their national champion, what was the organizers' response? They scheduled Alex Eala on a tiny side court that by its very design was physically incapable of holding even a small portion of the people who had come specifically for her. An utter collapse of planning and execution took place. Now, one could suggest it was simply poor planning, and that they could have assigned her to a larger stadium. Sure, but the excuse is always that she's so young, just breaking onto the scene. With Alexa, this has been a constant point of discussion, and it's easy to see why. You have these athletes coming from their home countries like her from the Philippines, and it becomes a huge phenomenon. She is the most successful tennis player ever from that nation, a populous country, and the interest is immense with people queuing outside in the blistering heat. They were stuck in agonizing lines that wound around the stadium grounds under the brutal Australian summer sun, desperately hoping for any chance to get through the gates and see just a piece of the match. The sad truth is that a great number of them never made it. They had traveled so far. They had used their hard-earned savings, taken their vacation time, and journeyed across oceans to be present for this moment. And their reward was to be stuck outside a stadium hearing the distant roar of a crowd they couldn't join, trying to piece together the score of a match happening mere feet away that they were physically barred from seeing. Then, to add to the heartbreak, Eala was knocked out of the tournament. And those fiercely loyal supporters, who had given so much of themselves just to be there for her, were left with nothing but the bitter and draining memory of being stuck in a line that barely moved. Jessica Pegula did not hold back in the slightest when she called out this fiasco. She didn't bother with carefully crafted PR statements. She identified it as pure disrespect. Disrespect for Alexa, a competitor who has rightfully earned her place in the spotlight, and disrespect for the thousands of paying fans who are the very foundation of the sport. And it's a deep disrespect for the phenomenal transformative influence that Eala is having on women's tennis across Southeast Asia. But the thing that gives Pegula's criticism so much power, the reason her comments are creating such a stir in the tennis world, is that she isn't just some detached expert or analyst offering opinions from a TV studio. This is a premier athlete who has been in the thick of it, who has played on those same courts, felt that same atmosphere up close, and has even stood opposite Eala, feeling the stunning and powerful energy of a pro-Eala crowd resonate in her own body. When Jessica Pegula looks the powers that be in the eye and declares that something is seriously wrong, she's speaking with the authority of direct, undeniable personal experience. However, Pegula did not leave it at that. She went one step further, pulling back the curtain on something that should have been a massive story for every major sports outlet on the planet. She revealed that she was told in no uncertain terms by insiders that the Australian Open had just witnessed its greatest, most vibrant crowd in its entire history, and that this record-shattering, money-making attendance was driven in large part by the drawing power of Alex Eala. Let that fact really settle in. Just consider the absolute business incompetence that this reality exposes. The greatest, most profitable, and most dynamic crowd the Grand Slam had ever hosted. And the very player who was most responsible for creating that surge of excitement was intentionally downplayed and exiled to one of the smaller courts on the premises. That is not a simple scheduling mistake. It is not a minor data entry error by some junior staffer. It is a deliberate choice made by the tournament leadership. And it's an awful, degrading choice. It's the old establishment of tennis sending a clear message to the sport's rising stars. We are not impressed by how many tickets you move. We don't give a damn how loud your supporters cheer. You have not yet earned a seat at our table. And Jessica Pegula is far from the only person working to dismantle that entire way of thinking. With every tournament that passes, the groundswell of influential voices rallying behind Alex Eala is becoming more forceful and impossible to ignore. And then Novak Djokovic enters the conversation. This is a man holding a record 24 Grand Slam singles championships, a feat unmatched by any other male player in history. He is a person who has navigated every facet of the sport, seen all the underhanded politics, and knows the ins and outs of professional tennis completely. This is a player who famously had to battle the sports establishment for his entire career just to earn the respect he was due, especially when up against establishment favorites like Federer and Nadal. So when a figure like Novak Djokovic speaks, the entire world of sports holds its breath and listens. Without any prompting, Djokovic took the microphone and spoke candidly about the phenomenal player from the Philippines. He proclaimed Alex Eala as the most exceptional tennis player to ever emerge from the Philippines. He openly called for her to be treated with the utmost respect from the media, the fans, and most critically from the game's officials. And most importantly, he validated the claim that the abysmal handling of her court placements and match times by the WTA and tournament organizers has directly created significant and unjust hurdles for her in these high-pressure competitions. Djokovic said, "It is a good problem to have, but you could argue that it was maybe a poor schedule and maybe they could schedule her on a bigger court." When a player with the colossal, almost legendary status of Novak Djokovic steps forward and confirms the legitimacy of your struggle, the entire narrative shifts for good. This issue is no longer confined to a passionate fan base voicing their frustrations on Twitter. Now the icons of the sport, the very titans of the game, are publicly condemning what they see as a consistent pattern of disrespect that they deem completely unacceptable. But if you believe that questionable scheduling and poor court assignments are the only methods the establishment is using to unsettle Alex Eala, you are missing the bigger picture, because the situation runs much deeper and is far more troubling than simple logistics. Let me recall a deeply unsettling incident that starkly revealed the strange double standard Alex Eala endures on the tour. We are referring to her high-profile showdown against Iga Świątek. For perspective, Iga Świątek is a multiple Grand Slam winner, holds the world #1 ranking, and is considered one of the most commanding and relentless competitors in women's tennis in a generation. Simply sharing the court with Świątek is an intimidating prospect for most opponents, but Eala was not intimidated. Eala was locked in a fierce battle during a pivotal high-tension point in the match. Just as Eala was hitting her stride, pushing back, and beginning to build some genuinely threatening momentum against the planet's top player, something unimaginable happened. At that exact knife-edge moment, a tournament official decided to halt play, walk onto the court, and approach Eala to inspect the contents of her tennis bag. I need you to grasp the sheer absurdity of doing that during an intense baseline war with the world's #1 player. Think about the bizarre timing, the major disruption it created, and the way it purposefully shattered her hard-won rhythm, completely icing her at a critical point in the set. You just never see officials march onto a main court to search the bags of established Western superstars right when they are hitting a hot streak. That kind of thing is unprecedented. It violates every unspoken code of match etiquette and respect for the players, and the action made no logical sense unless you're prepared to consider a more disturbing possibility. It is possible the interruption was not a coincidence. It is possible it was a calculated administrative tactic intended to break the concentration of the young underdog who was starting to look far too dangerous against the establishment's favored champion. But if the WTA event organizers and officials believed these strategies, the small courts, the excluded fans, the weird mid-match interruptions would crush her resolve. They have profoundly misjudged the absolute warrior they are up against. All this adversity proves one thing above all else: Alex Eala is without a single doubt here to stay. She has no intention of quietly fading away. The bright lights and the murky politics of the sport are not going to intimidate her. Every single challenge they have put in her path has only served to forge her into a stronger and more formidable competitor. Every controversial call from an umpire, every assignment to a small court that keeps her fans out, and every questionable scheduling choice seemingly engineered to kill her momentum has had the complete opposite effect. Instead of dampening her rise, these actions have only amplified her incredible story. It has galvanized her enormous following, transforming her from just a talented athlete into a global symbol of defiance. She is quickly becoming a figure whose influence extends beyond the sport's internal politics. She is growing larger than the tour's persistent refusal to give her the grand stage she has so clearly earned with her own blood, sweat, and tears. The most respected figures in tennis see exactly what is unfolding, and Jessica Pegula recognizes her undeniable superstar power. Novak Djokovic recognizes her Hall of Fame potential. Coco Gauff sees her tenacity, and millions of intensely proud and vocal fans worldwide witness it every single time she laces up her shoes and gets on the court. The WTA can continue to play its administrative games. They can persist in assigning her to Court 6, Court 12, or any other obscure side court they wish to relegate her to, and they can keep pretending they cannot hear the roar of Filipino fans echoing through the venue. But let's be perfectly clear, there is absolutely nothing insignificant about Alexa's presence anymore. Not her immense explosive power from the baseline, and certainly not her relentless never-say-die fighting spirit. And that is most certainly not going to be her future. The powers that be can either construct a larger arena to accommodate her, or they will be utterly steamrolled by this movement because Alexa is gunning for the throne and she's taking an entire country with her.